How's it going, everybody? This is the Discovering Bigfoot podcast. And today we have a super important and special guest on the show, Doug Hajicek. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I know you're busy. I know you have a crazy schedule. So it means a lot.
Yeah, and it's my pleasure, Kyle. I
Awesome.
mean, I was worried about you. When I heard you're from Florida, I'm like, oh my God, the damage down there is it's horrid.
Yeah, luckily I'm on the East Coast of Florida. So it's not,
Yeah,
we still got hit pretty hard, but not as bad
yeah,
as the West Coast did because it landed as a category 4 over there.
yeah. It's just glad you're okay, but yeah, I certainly pray for all the people that are dealing with mud and water and debris
Yeah.
and damage like I've never seen.
Yeah, there's going to be a long road
Oh,
to
it's bad.
rebuilding,
Yeah, it's
unfortunately.
bad.
But that's kind of what we get for living in Florida.
Yeah. Well, we had our home destroyed about 10 years ago
Oh
from
wow.
a huge storm. And it's one of the worst, experiences to be trying to deal with regular life and then trying to figure out how to get your home repaired. I can only imagine with the supply shortages and all the problems and, that are just going to happen down there.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's just one of those things, unfortunately.
Yep.
Hopefully people have good insurance and whatnot in order to get through it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's get into it. Like I said, thank you again for coming on the show. I'm a huge fan of yours. I grew up watching Monster Quest. I grew up watching, Jeff Meldrum's involvement and stuff with Bigfoot. And also, Les Stroud, Survivor Man. He was a big influencer in my life too. So thank you for uh, pretty much devoting your life to doing this research. It means a lot to me, and I'm sure hundreds of thousands of other people.
Yeah, I mean it's been my pleasure, but I really got into this, Kyle, because I came upon my own footprints. I was up in the Arctic doing fish research of all things and came upon footprints. And when you see something, it isn't bear, it's not human, and then it dawns on you that nobody's dealing with this problem. I mean, after I saw that, I got back home and I just felt lost. And I was so shocked. Nobody was dealing with this. I wanted all these answers and there weren't any.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I
that's,
think people still run into that problem today when
of course they do.
they're driving home from work and this thing runs out in front of them
Yeah,
and they can't say anything because they'll lose their job or
right.
they get ridiculed and all that other stuff. So I mean, it's
It's,
still an
it,
issue.
right. It's life changing. And I think the part of the key is to channel that, which I did, trying to do, I was already in the TV business, but to put my efforts towards that because I knew TV would fund forensics and research and DNA tests. And of course, even back then, we're all a little naive on, figuring, well, maybe we can actually get answers. And then, of course, as I got into it more and more years, you realize it's a tougher mystery than everybody knows. People always like, well, why don't you just go out and get footage of it? Not so easy.
No. No, and trust me, I've spent a lot of time out in the woods myself and I've had opportunities to pull out a
Yeah.
phone and I just don't. It's just not,
You don't even
it's not
think
something,
about it.
yeah, it's not something you think about
Oh,
when you're
yeah.
looking, up at a 9 foot tall Sasquatch or, it runs across the trail. You're just so taken back that you're like,
Yeah.
you don't even know what to think.
And sometimes, that's okay. It's okay to live life. I don't think everybody should look at life through a lens. And, it shouldn't be the first thing you think about. The
Right.
first thing you should think about is taking in what you're seeing.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's why I have a lot of problem taking footage too, because I'm just so caught in the moment when
Yeah.
I'm having that interaction. I'm so excited. I'm like just amazed that this is happening. I'm so honored and grateful for it. It's just
Yeah.
my phone or my camera is just not even in there.
Yeah. Well, we're all human. And I've had my last sighting was only about 5 years ago. And I'm with a witness. And we're seeing this thing walking in a ditch in some alders, but we could clearly see its back and the back of its head and its arms. We didn't, that was the last thing we thought about
Yeah.
was getting a photo, or it's just not, For one, you're in shock for 10 minutes. You're totally in shock.
Yeah. My first setting was like that. I was looking through binoculars and I'm looking at this perfect like image of a Sasquatch. Like
Hmm.
I see the head, I see the shoulders, the arms coming, I can see the muscles, the hair, and I'm like, I don't even know what to do right now. You
Yeah.
know?
Takes time. I mean, and I've had more than one sighting, but every time you're never expecting it.
No,
It's still a big shock each time.
absolutely it
Yeah.
is. Um, firstly, I want to kind of talk about the history of Sasquatch, and basically, like the native cave paintings and the folklore coming and stemming from um, their tribes and their stories and stuff. Obviously, this has been a story for thousands upon thousands of years, and we have fossil proof to kind of prove it. Like you were saying on one of your shows that you did, the land bridge coming over from Russia and Asia back in 10, 15,000 years ago, or was it longer than that? I'm sorry.
It was longer, but it's all debatable.
Right. And so clearly there is a species out there or has been out there that's very close to the same um, visual, identification.
Similar,
So,
yeah.
do you think the cave paintings and stuff that have been passed on through tradition is because maybe they lived a little bit longer than we thought, or do you think it's actually because of Sasquatch itself?
Well, first off, I've never been real impressed with the pictographs and the paintings that have been there. Only because they're very artsy.
Hmm.
Not really. I'm not one of those people that for sure thinks those are Bigfoot. Probably are, but I'm not sure. What impresses me about native culture are the hundreds and hundreds of names for these creatures
Right.
by tribes that, geographically were completely separated.
Hmm.
And that they all have their own names and their own stories and their own take on the creature. And even their own take on the creature kind of mirrors today because some people think they're metaphysical, some think they're, spirits, some think they're physical, something, in other words, we don't agree. They didn't agree back then either. I mean, there were tribes that thought they were cannibals. There were other tribes that thought they were, they were there to save us. So to me, I take more stock in that than anything.
Right. Yeah, that makes more sense too. And
Yeah.
because the cave paintings could have been something different too.
They could have been. Yeah, they're very. If you really studied them, and I've got them. I think I've got some right behind me here, behind my backdrop. And I look at them a lot, and it's kind of like sometimes I think, yeah, there could be a Bigfoot. Other times I think, well, it could be grass. They could be a headdress that they've made out of grass or other. You know what I mean?
Maybe it's
They're
like a
they're
form of like a ghillie suit so they could
yeah,
get
like a
closer to
ghillie
deer.
suit, camouflage. Just never been impressed with them. But I go off. I can only go off what others say. Kathy Strain, completely convinced that they're Bigfoots, and they very well could be. I just am not convinced. But what I am convinced are the hundreds of names for these coast to coast. That
Yeah,
to me, that's impressive.
right. And I feel the same way too about that. But back in those times where it was just kind of hearsay back there. Obviously, I think the game of telephone could have been involved in that too. But there's too many, like you said, there's too many names and there's too many different stories and
Yeah.
myths about it.
And
But
conclusions. Remember,
right,
each tribe in each area had their own conclusion on what they were,
exactly.
just like today.
And I think, I mean, there are a lot of aggressive troops out there. So I feel like maybe some of the aggressive encounters that they've had were most likely true. Or I mean, I wouldn't say
Sure.
that the cannibal ones, I would hope they're not true, but of course there's always a possibility.
We don't know because anybody, if they've kidnapped anybody, taken them away and killed them, the witness is gone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everything that they saw and went through is
Yeah.
lost to time
Lost.
and to
Yeah.
history. And that's unfortunate. But um I think that a lot of those myths, I'm happy that they got passed down in time and that they've been talked about and brought up, and we can actually research those and and actually go and talk to the elders and stuff
Yeah.
like that on the reserves. And they still have stuff going on today, which leads me to believe that they're still around.
Yeah, like the area you were in British Columbia. I think they think they're cannibals in that area, in your neck, the neck of the woods you were. You were up by was it Bellacula? Where were you at?
So I was, we call it radium, which is
Okay. Radium
just
Springs.
yeah, right around the Kootenai National Park
Yeah.
borderline.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
there I do believe that most of the natives believe they're cannibals
well,
or
see,
killers.
that's the thing that it's weird for me because when I go out there and I have an encounter, I don't feel anything like that. I'm not scared. I'm not terrified. I'm not worried that they're going to come and kill me because at the end of the day, if they want you dead, you're going to be dead. And that's
Yeah.
just the bottom line. I mean, I had one 15 feet away from me. If he wanted me dead, all he had to do was just reach out.
Yeah.
That's it. There was nothing between him and I. So when they come out, I feel more, like I said, humbled that they do. So, but I also think they may have done that for a reason because they don't want people coming in and encroaching on their land. So they're going to make it seem, hey, if we
Right.
scare you and make you think that you're going to die if you come in here, you're not going to come back, and that's what we want.
Yeah, I believe they operate on fear. They do a lot of bluffing, intimidation,
Very intimidating.
but I think that it would be, maybe one out of a great amount of animals or creatures that would actually be dangerous.
Hmm.
Um, but like people, you could get 1,000 people in the room, and they're most chances are most of them are going to be good people.
Yeah,
But
no, I
there may
agree
be
with
one of them that's,
you. Yep. And like
and
when I go out there, I'm honestly more concerned with the grizzly bears and the black
yeah,
bears than I am with Sasquatch.
yeah, right, yeah, I would be too. Yeah, if I was camping in British Columbia, I'd be more worried about grizzlies.
Yeah, and it's I mean, there's a place, I think it's a mountain or it's an area, it's called Powder Face. And it's
Mm,
only an hour or two from Calgary, and that's like known for grizzly bears killing people. Like 5 or 6 people have
yeah.
died up there. And people go, like, hunters go up there, and they hunt up in there a day or two and they come back out, and 50 feet from their car they're mauled.
Yeah.
It's like uh, I honestly like, and another thing too is when I'm up in radium, bears don't. I don't. I've never had a problem. I've been out there for a month straight, and I've never had a bear encounter there. They do not come around me, and I don't know why. Because the next expedition, literally that next week, like a weekend will go by, and they'll see 5 or 6 bears in 3 days. I'm out there for 2 weeks straight. I don't see one. They don't come around me. Nothing. So I almost feel like the Sasquatch kind of protect me from them. They don't allow them to come around me, which I'm entirely grateful for. But
We don't know.
it
Yeah,
doesn't make sense.
could be that.
But so yeah, definitely the history has been passed on. But I also wanted to ask you about one other thing. So obviously the Gigantopithecus is a theory that they lived on and evolved into modern day Sasquatch. But I was curious about your thoughts on the Denisovians.
Well, basically, I mean, in a nutshell, my thoughts are, it's not going to be too long before we get the entire proper genome sequences done from several samples. I actually feel I'm sitting on enough samples that have been highly vetted. For instance, the Elba vernix, the skin oil from the face, beautiful face print. We've got the sample to analyze the makeup of the skin lipids.
You got a face print?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So, and then we've got a bunch of sloughed off skin cells. But the point is, it's highly vetted because you can see the face print is not from a human, and it left this very gooey, oily mess, on the window, but very clear. And so that was actually found by a family in Texas, and then Michael Waldy actually called me, was very excited, sent me photos. And of course, this came right after I started connecting the dots, the fact that their skin oil was different. It was waxier, it was whiter. For years, I've been looking at, fingerprints and handprints on windows and windshields and car paint and car doors and, sliding doors. And all of a sudden it hit me one day, hey, that's not dust. That's actually skin oil. And it's thicker and stickier. So also, in the same token, we were collecting our own samples up north using plastic. And these things seem to like to touch smooth objects like glass. Anything really shiny and smooth, if you, instead of leaving food, try leaving a piece of plexiglass. You can put a little piece of Velcro on it to collect hair. And it's a good chance if one sees that object and they're not spooked by it, they'll handle it. Because think about it, in the forest, there's nothing smooth.
No, you're right.
Nothing.
Well, there are some nice river rocks that are smooth, but
yeah, but not like high gloss paint.
no.
Think about how high gloss acrylic is, and they just can't seem to resist touching it, or glass. I mean, I've been looking at photos for 30 years on windshields and side glass. I've left these big white fingerprints. Well, one day I just dawned on me that's skin oil. And then through talking, we got Shelley Covington to name it Alba vernix, which means white. And then vernix is the waxy substance that a baby is born with. It's very waterproof. And then, of course, if you think about all the reasons, why would they need thicker skin oil? One, it would help them grip stuff big time. Two, it would protect them from the weather, from insects, keep their skin moist out in the sun and the weather. And we don't know if it's coming out of their pores or if they're getting it from their armpits, for instance, because I had a zookeeper call me and say, nobody knows anything about this, but I take care of 4 gorillas. And one day these males all came out with these big white bubbles coming off from under their armpits. And I'm like, whoa, what's, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, they just thick white stuff. And they were smearing it on the glass and we couldn't even clean it off. And I went, bingo, that's exactly this other stuff because it's almost permanent. You can't get it off. You can take, Windex and it's still on there. And so when they collected like this face print, I remember getting the comments because I was on the phone with them and they had the face masks and they had the DNA collection kits, but they were just commenting how sticky it was.
That's so cool.
It's really cool. But here's where it gets exciting. It's really 3D evidence.
Yeah.
You have the latent details of a handprint. You cannot fake whoops and whirls and fingerprints. And then, of course, you've got the size. So, yeah, you get the latent details and the massive size. Then there's going to be sloughed off skin cells. So you're going to have DNA. And there's going to be a chemical compound. Every primate has their own chemical signature of the surface skin lipids, the sebum, skin oil. For instance, gorillas and humans, we have cholesterol in our sebum, our skin oil. Gorillas don't. We have a certain level of triglycerides. They have their own level of triglycerides. There's many compounds that are shared, but in different amounts. And there's been a scientific study already on gorillas, chimps, orangutans. They're all different. So my guess and my hope is Bigfoot's going to have its own signature chemicals.
Hypothetically,
cool, it should because just myself, I bet I can collect 25, 30 samples a year. Just me. Let alone and for no money, no cost. And for 20 scientists to get together and start doing this and leaving these skin oil traps. So we're really for the first time looking at 3D evidence.
That's so awesome.
And this is all going to tell a big story on what they're related to. So me speculating on what extinct human that they're related to, it's meaningless, whether it's Giganto, Neanderthal. I mean, like every time I talk to Jeff, he's got another early hominid that he thinks it might be related to. And that's fine. It's great. And he's using facts and inference as we learn more about the early hominids. But on the same token, it doesn't really matter to me because at some point we're going to know, because our gen bank can continue to increase and get bigger and better. The DNA technology every year gets 10 times what it was the year before. I'm dealing with geneticists now that are getting crime solved, 50-year-old crime solved from 3 skin cells.
Wow.
They're 50 years old, and they're literally making arrests every week. I just got another text from my company. They just arrested another guy from an old crime, from way back,
Wow.
an old DNA. This is how good they're getting at this. So the chance now of getting a full sequence of Bigfoot and actually been able to figure out, oh, okay, so this all matches human, this part of it, 98% of it. We don't care about that. We care about the other, 2%.
Right.
Where did it come from? And that will lead us to the early hominid it's related to, which we even hope there is one. There may not be. They may be their own relative. They may have never interbred.
Wow.
We don't know. So, but the point is, we will know at some point. It's the whole genetic code is not going to hide forever.
No. And like you said, there's too many factors involved in it
Right.
to even be considered fake. You can't fake skin cells. You can't fake DNA. You can't
No.
fake biometrics.
No. When you really think about the fact when DNA comes out, we get numerous labs that do it because we finally have collected enough samples. So this isn't going to prove the existence, but what it's going to do is raise the bar enough. I think other scientists at this point will go, okay.
Right. It's not just folklore anymore. It's not just
Right.
stories. There's actually scientific backing.
Yep.
That was going to be my next question too, is why is there so much backlash in this whole topic? Because like there's great scientists like you, like Jeff Meldrum, who are out there, and even the footprints are identified in science as being legitimate, real footprints, but the being that makes them isn't. So why is it being covered up? Why do you think it's a cover up, or do you think it's just people think it's such a hypocrisy that they don't even want to touch it?
I think it's what I call a disorganized cover up, if you know what I mean by that. For instance, I've talked to BLM agents that have found footprints themselves.
Wow.
Casted them in the bottom drawer. They won't show anybody. They're not going to go to their boss. It's just kind of secret. Maybe the people in that office all know about it, all believe in it, but that's not going anywhere. And then the higher ups might know, but nobody's really communicating. It's like a bunch of alphabet agencies. They're not talking to each other.
Right.
So I don't think it's an organized cover up. I think it's a disorganized cover up. I also think there's stigmatisms attached to believing in Bigfoot or investigating. They're slowly going away, kind of like UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's slowly dropping away. Are you aware there was a Wall Street Journal article here the other day on Bigfoot?
I was not aware of that.
No, of course, no, you weren't. Not many people are, but there was. And the reason there was an article is because of Zoo Book. Have you ever heard of Zoo Book?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a member of Zoo Book, and we get together every other Thursday. It's lots of scientists, and all we do is talk. What's said in Zoo Book stays in Zoo Book. I'm not allowed to give anybody's names, to give away identities. These people do not, they don't want their name, out, but we can, in this forum, freely share information.
So you're like Freemasons of the Bigfoot community.
Yes, that's
so cool.
That's what we are. Yeah. So, the Wall Street Journal got wind of this and did an article.
Really?
Even though, of course, they're not naming either.
Right.
But I'm hoping this gets a little traction. I just got an email that said that because I predicted some of the national news might pick up on this. Kind of a big deal being in the Wall Street Journal in a big article. And so there are now. I just got the email. It said, there's this news and that news is. So this may end up breaking wide open just from a dumb Wall Street um, news article.
That would be awesome.
I mean, literally, could be anything that can trigger the break. In the UFO community, it was the Tic Tac video.
Yeah.
It was one guy, a whistleblower,
Yep.
that quit and then did the whistleblowing. It's one guy, but literally, there's been whistleblowers like crazy in the past.
Mm-hmm.
They went nowhere. But you just never know what's going to catch fire, right? It's kind of that. If we all knew what would catch fire, your podcast would right now have 20 million viewers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But in your podcast is as good as probably one that gets 20 million views.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
It's
Joe
just,
Rogan.
It's just, what causes the trigger, the virus. So I'm hoping if the Wall Street Journal thing doesn't, when we release results in this other, maybe it will, but maybe it won't.
Mm-hmm.
We could end up with the genome from 5 different labs, right? With many different samples, all independent, and it won't even make the news.
It's crazy to think.
Or it could go viral.
Yeah.
We don't know. But I'm just letting you know that there's some big stuff coming down the pike.
That's awesome. Let's do it. Let's get it done.
It all boils down to a little bit of money. What's so nice is I've got multiple labs now going, Doug, we will run all your stuff at cost, meaning just for the raw materials, just for lab costs. In other words, no profit, just, the gels and the supplies they need to run the samples.
Right, like labor and whatnot.
Yeah, no labor. They're not even going to charge labor. No, just the materials, just their direct costs.
That's awesome. I hope something comes through soon.
Yeah,
it's really soon, because I think there's a lot more writing on this discovery than just, oh, it's a new species and that's it. There's so much more to it.
Oh, there is. I mean, think of the medical. Think of the human history. The whole human history might get rewritten.
Yeah, that's a whole other side that I wasn't even thinking about. But there's also the side that it's going to impact, how we kind of live, because if we discover a type of human, relic hominid that lives in the woods, we're going to have problems with logging. We're going to have problems with oil. We're going to have problems with national park boundaries. We're going to have problems with, inaccessible land and all that stuff. I mean, water is going to be an issue now, and everything in that watershed and contained in those areas. I mean, we don't even know how big their habitat is. I mean, it could be 50 square miles. It could be 200 square miles.
No, we don't know how many there are.
Yeah.
We don't know their range. We don't know if they migrate, don't migrate. We know nothing. And, I'm not afraid to admit I've learned nothing in, almost 40 years.
Wow.
When I say nothing, I mean, yes, I've learned a lot of anecdotal facts.
Right.
Meaning I can grab a cast, I can look at it. That's an anecdotal fact. There it is in front of me. I can touch it, feel it, put it under magnifying glass. But I don't know anything about the animal that made it.
Right.
I know sort of, it's implied to eat meat because it's the only food that's available all year. So we're implying they eat meat, just implied. But we don't know for sure.
Right.
We don't know, do they all eat meat? Maybe some don't eat meat. Maybe they're vegetarians. Maybe some are only meat eaters. They're only carnivores. Maybe this, maybe that. I mean, we don't know,
Mm-hmm.
But, we believe they probably migrate towards food. They probably follow certain berries as they ripen, north or south. We probably, we figure they probably eat ungulates. I'm assuming the populations are getting bigger because there's so many more deer now. It's more food. We have more edges. I can just go on from the time I was a child. I lived in the woods. I mean, I never came home. I not only lived in the woods all summer, I slept in a tent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the last place I wanted to be was in my bedroom.
Right.
So, but I never saw any wildlife, Kyle. None. Zero. Never saw an eagle. Never saw a deer. There weren't any. There were no hawks, no wild turkeys, no fox, no coyotes. None of these animals existed. Now you're too young to know that, but I remember somebody saw a deer and it made the newspaper.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I read the article, and I'm really excited. Like, oh my God, somebody spotted a deer. So try to put that in perspective, because to you they're rats with antlers,
Well,
right?
not
Wherever.
really. Like I grew up in the woods and hunting and stuff, so I do love all those animals. But
No,
yeah, that's hard
but
for me to.
what I'm trying to say is the populations have immensely
Oh yeah,
increased. I never saw a sandhill crane. I
yeah,
see them every day now.
yeah.
Huge cranes. Turkeys. I can't ride my bike 2 blocks without seeing a flock of wild turkeys.
Hmm.
Deer everywhere. Fox, coyotes, rabbits everywhere. I mean, even the populations of the smaller mammals have greatly increased. The amount of reptiles. People say, well, the reptiles are going extinct, frogs
Come down to Florida.
and toads. I'm like, are you nuts? I have never seen the types of reptiles that I see now. The amount of turtles I see, the amount of everything. Part of it is we've cleaned the environment up. Oh my God, there was some, like, back in the old days, in the 60s or 50s, I had to go out and burn the garbage every night. Plastic, spray cans. I mean, everything went in the garbage, and you set it on fire in the backyard, as did every American. All across the USA was in the backyard burning their garbage. That alone caused a huge amount of pollution. And no doubt affected all the mammals and birds and everything. And then we were using DDT,
Oh yeah.
which greatly affected the populations, the whole food chain. Trust me, they would say, well, it made the eagles' eggs weak, and the eggshells thin, and blah blah blah. No, BS. It affected the entire food chain. That got outlawed. Then we invented fuel injection, which was probably the biggest thing that cleaned the air.
Yeah.
Just fuel injection.
Yeah.
Wasn't the catalytic converter. It was none of those. It was just fuel injection. And before you would take a ride to the grocery store, you'd come home smelling like gasoline.
Right, because you burned 10 gallons to get there and back.
Yeah, and most of it was wasted. It just spewing out the carburetor.
Yep.
Well, now, the only way you can smell it, go down to Mexico and some places of Mexico where they don't have fuel injected cars, or Cuba, where the majority of cars still have carburetors, and all you smell is just, oh my God, it's horrible. And I just remembered, like, it brought back all the memories when I was a kid. Anyhow, what I'm trying to get at, the world has gotten so much cleaner. The water, the land, the air, everything. The animals are back. I had a bear in my backyard here, a black bear. Before that, I mean, the chances of ever seeing a black bear in Minnesota when I was a kid would have been a jillion to one.
Wow.
Now they're everywhere. We got 50,000 black bears roaming around Minnesota. They're in the suburbs now. I saw a cougar crossed in front of my car. Saw another one on the golf course. Mountain lion. We have lynx. I mean, it's just, I get so excited about the animals now. But I also sad that now I'm, all the animals are back, and I don't really, I'm getting old, and I don't have a lot of years to enjoy them.
No, I understand that.
Yeah. So anyhow, I think Bigfoots are increasing too in population.
Yeah. See, I do agree with you on that, but I also worry about our encroachment. Like more houses are being built. There's more, industry being formed, and there's people buying land that wasn't previously available. And there's also a lot of that really hard logging that they do, like even on
but let me interrupt you really quick, because this is a little bit of a, I love the true wilderness, right? Untouched. But I can also tell you there's not much wildlife in true wilderness.
Yeah.
There's not. The animals love edges. They love and thrive on edges. All the animals do. The bugs do. The birds do. All the mammals do. So in some ways, these edges are actually very good for the environment. Even though we think, oh, it's an eyesore. Yeah, it is an eyesore. I'd much rather be in the middle of the Canadian wilderness, where I'm 500 miles from the nearest road, than in the semi-suburbs, where you got sprawl going on, urban
Hmm.
sprawl. But it's not as bad as you might think, though, either. In other words, even in that, there's still hope.
Right.
So, as long as we keep spaces, green spaces,
Hmm.
and we manage those, the animals will continue to thrive.
Right. And I also think that there could be a little bit better selective logging too. Like not going in there and taking everything, just
Yes.
taking something over a certain size or diameter,
Right.
and being as the least encroaching as possible, when it
I think
comes
I
to
would
stuff
like to
like
see
that.
smaller plots logged. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Yes.
Um,
But once again, young trees are really good for good habitat for wildlife. In fact, the places I seek out for Bigfoot research are ones that are all reprod. They're all just replanted crap, aspen and birch, and that's where the populations of deer are. That's where the Bigfoots are.
that would make sense.
So, but like Minnesota really got logged heavy, and way back, like we lost most of our white pines.
Mm.
Um, but I look at it's just all replanted, everything.
Hmm.
To find an original forest now is pretty rare.
Yeah.
But do the animals mind? Not necessarily. Part of the thing is we had a lot more fires. Let's go back 1,000 years. We had a lot more fires that happened, from lightning and droughts and then lightning. And those fires would just burn and burn and burn
Everything.
and burn. So we don't have that. And so in some ways, the logging helps with the younger trees
Yeah, it
that are
helps
more.
mitigate the fire hazard. Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
I agree
okay,
with you on
let's
that.
let's just talk about a 200-year-old tree. There's nothing there but bark for the animals to eat,
Hmm.
because literally they're looking up, 100 feet up in the air. It's just still bark. If you take a young aspen tree, you're now feeding hundreds of animals. From the flowers, the catkins they can get to the in the spring, to all the leaves and the bark and the nice soft young bark. It's all high protein. So there's a lot more protein in a young tree than an old tree.
Absolutely. And that's why, like the selective logging, I feel like would be better because it also opens up that canopy to allow for those younger trees
Yep.
to come in too.
Selective logging is good, but yeah, I see some areas. I when I was out even west, even on Vancouver Island, and I saw these areas that were just, come on, there's no excuse for this kind of logging. They
Right.
were just cleaning everything off a mountain. Like, really?
Yeah. No, that's crazy. And
It's cheaper.
I think yeah, I think the Sasquatch really, I think that does bother them a lot. Well, I know it bothers them a lot. And
Yeah, there's no doubt. I agree.
I really, like obviously we have a really huge demand for the lumber industry, but I feel like there needs to be some regulations involved in that in order to protect those habitats, and not just for the
Mhm.
Sasquatch, but for all the other animals too.
Yeah.
Like you were
Yeah.
saying, the younger trees are better for the deer. Yeah, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying if we mitigate some of that logging and we take those older trees out, we allow for those younger trees to come in, the
Yeah.
deer will be in there more. It'll be better for them. There'll be
Yeah.
more sustenance for them.
I'm not a clear cut fan. I've seen too much of it. They just need to maybe short or make the area they can clear cut much smaller, like by a quarter. I'm sure people wouldn't mind paying 10 cents more for a 2x4.
It's already so expensive already
Oh,
because of
yeah.
COVID.
I
But
know. Yeah.
um, and so since we're talking about the forest and stuff like that, and you doing your research, when you were doing Monster Quest and you were focused on the Bigfoot research of it, where did you go? Was it always like in the dense forest, or was it like you said where it was just kind of new growth stuff?
Well, first off, when you're doing a TV show, I mean, there's so many good research areas that you can drive to,
Hmm.
that you don't need to go in the wilderness. um, I'm not saying there's nothing in the wilderness, but how do you get gear, batteries, chargers, generators back into a deep wilderness? When we did Sasquatch attacks,
Hmm.
we had to fly with a float plane, all this batteries and things that we needed and get dropped off. You don't even want to know what that cost. It's like
Oh,
10 flights with a float plane. loaded with 12-volt batteries so we could charge things. Um, so you generally try to stick to edges,
Hmm.
edges of wilderness, because to me that's where the action is anyhow. I mean, that's always been my experience. It's the edges, people. It's the edges. It's the forest where it meets the apple orchard.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I had an apple orchard up by me where I grew up, where it was just primo for deer hunting, because
Yeah,
they'd have one or two paths that went in or out, but it was either to the apple orchards or to the stream.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
so that was always the best spot.
Yeah,
So filming Monster Quest and having, obviously you had a film crew out there, and multiple people running around and multiple people doing, certain things, being in charge of one, being in charge of another thing. I gotta admit, or I gotta imagine that there were some people out there that didn't really like what was going on around them. Maybe be whoops or screams or howls or tree knocks or stuff. You got any stories from people quitting on you?
sure. And sometimes I've done so many TV shows and so many episodes that could all become kind of a blur. Like, I've done numerous shows at Mount St. Helens area. Sometimes it's all a blur, but I remember one time we were in Mount St. Helens, and I remember the night before we were playing Coyote Calls, and we ended up getting chest beats back.
Ooh.
Um, and I remember then walking away, down away, because it was a mixed crowd, and I had to go pee, and I ended up getting growled at, like really one of these deep Bigfooty type growls. It seemed to come out of nowhere, but it just shook my body.
Yeah.
The next day, the guy that was in charge of driving the truck with all the gear and the camper for some of the crew to stay in, um, he was just walking to the restroom broad daylight. I think we were all at Ape Canyon, and
Okay.
while we were gone, he got growled at. When we got back, he basically threw his towels down, said, "I'm grabbing that car. I know it ain't mine, but I'm grabbing that rental car and I'm out of here." He said, I'm not sleeping here anymore. I'm not blah, 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 blah. He got scared and he left. And there's been other times where I've been with crew where some of them have actually broken down into tears because of fear.
Yeah.
Something will happen that all of a sudden it dawns on them that, oh, monsters are real. We're in the middle of nowhere in a swamp and we've gotten in there, in some, weird swamp buggy vehicle. And all of a sudden we've got like wood knocking getting closer and closer until it's right on top of us,
Hmm.
which I don't believe is wood, but that wood knock sound. And then looking at some grown man and there's tears running down his cheeks because he's so petrified.
Yeah.
It's just hitting him that these things are real. It just thought it was all BS.
No, yeah, it's man, it's a certain type of fear too.
Yeah, it is. And I've never made fun of anybody that's gotten that way. I watched my own son go into shock one time on a History Channel show um, that we were up filming, and he was helping with sound. And he thought, even though he grew up with information, he thought, it's BS
Hmm.
until things started really going down. And the cabin got attacked,
Ooh.
and he knew and could see everybody was there, and the cabin's getting attacked. And he started going into shock, you
Wow.
know. So I'm not going to make fun of him. It's just, it is what it is. Your
Yeah.
mind gets overloaded.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things that and you got to prepare for that.
Yeah.
And like I'm not going to say that the encounters that I've had have been amazing. Like every one of them is no. I've had some scary encounters, man, and I've gotten to the point where I've turned white. It's like, whoa, okay, like this is might not end well, and that's just there's going to be individuals out there that really just want you to leave, and they'll do what they can to get you scared enough to leave.
Yeah. Yeah. And, people get really critical about somebody else having fear. I remember when we did Sasquatch attacks, we were having rocks thrown at us that could kill you.
Oh yeah.
We're in the middle of nowhere. There's nowhere to get medical help. People darted into the cabin because rocks are coming out of the forest. Do you blame us? You know what's get beamed in the head with a baseball sized rock.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a risky
Not me,
situation to be
but
in.
people will write and say, "Oh, you're just a bunch of you know what," and it's like, yeah, yeah, I've got 6 kids. Yeah, I need to be around.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing with Todd too, is he's got a couple kids that he needs to come home to.
Yeah.
So the things that he used to do was a lot. It's really risky to do that stuff. And I think he realizes that now and he isn't so crazy about it. And that's why I'm kind of doing the crazy stuff now because I don't have kids that I have to worry about. I'll go sleep out in the woods by myself. That's fine. I'll do it. I'd rather me do it, honestly. I want him to go to home to his kids. I want the people who come out with us to go home to their kids. It's safety is number one. I had just 2 weeks ago or a week ago when I was out there with Ash Kozak, um, and she and I had some crazy screeching sound like coming at us,
Mm.
and I knew it wasn't a bird because it had way more of a lung capacity than a bird. But my first thought was, okay, it's a wounded elk or deer or something, and it's coming at us. If it's wounded, there's going to be some predator on its tail, and I don't need to be in between that and safety. So we're getting in the camper, and that's how it has to be
Yeah.
because safety has to be number one. So I trust me. There's times that I've probably could have stayed out there and faced it off, and it would have been some incredible encounter. But at the end of the day, I felt justified, and
Yeah.
you should
Yeah.
too,
The
especially if your safety's on the line.
yeah, the best way to find your bravery is to really plan and say to yourself, okay, if I hear anything outside, I'm grabbing this camera and I'm going to count to 2 and I'm going to run outside. You almost have to pre-plan it in your mind
Right.
what you're going to do. And then usually you can overcome fear. And I've done that
Mhm.
where I could say to myself, if this happens, I'm going to do this. And then, yeah, usually you can do it. I mean, even up at Snell, I remember one time grabbing a camera after something it just slammed into the side of the cabin in the wee hours right before the sun came up. And I remember I had my camera and I told myself, I hear anything, I'm grabbing this and running, and I did. I just made a beeline out there. Didn't see anything. And then somebody saw something out the right window, actually saw it duck under a tree. But I came out the front door and it was way off to the side.
Right. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like they have a pre-planned exit course.
But that took probably no bravery, only because I had it so planned in my mind, what I
Hmm.
was going to do.
Yeah, I mean, you set yourself up for that. You mentally
Yeah.
prepared for that. But it is a scary thing to have happen to you, especially something slamming the side of your cabin. Did
Yeah.
you find what that was? Was it like a log laying there, or was it his
No, it
hand?
was that day, that particular day that I ran out, it had grabbed somebody's big rod case. First, it threw the picnic table, which I can't even lift,
Whoa.
so, whipped it across the porch, and then grabbed one of these big, probably about 8 feet long, big heavy rod cases. He'd put like 20 fishing rods in to protect them. So
Hmm.
they're quite heavy. They grabbed it and just threw it at the side of the cabin.
Damn.
I mean, it hit like, God, boom,
Right.
you know what I mean? The whole cabin vibrated and literally everybody was awake instantly.
Yeah. Man, that's a scary encounter.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't know. It's the same thing gorillas do at the zoo. They'll smack the glass and then run.
Hmm.
Yeah, I call
Yeah.
it the grand finale. When like they come into your camp and they're messing around and doing whatever, usually they'll do a grand finale before they leave.
Yep.
Kind of like, see how strong I am.
Hmm.
Don't mess with me. Boom. And then they're out of there. They run.
Yeah. Usually our grand finales end up with a sighting or,
Mm.
something like that, and a sighting, and then they're like, okay. Like that happened to me that last night I was up in Radium. I just, oh, there he is right there. Okay. That was it.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to do anything else. And I felt that too. And it was
Yeah.
like, this is the best you're going to get. And I'm leaving and that's it. Like you can go to bed now. You saw me. You're welcome. But since we're on Monster Quest, I wanted to ask you too, what was one of the most memorable moments when it came to like Bigfoot and stuff and the research and the filming you were doing? What was the one thing that really was like, whoa, or was there a sighting that was really like a lot of people saw it, or was it just screams that you guys heard and recorded?
Oh, there's just quite a few of them. It's always, to me, I'm most interested in the Bigfoot mystery.
Hmm.
I'm interested in those, and then underwater research. Like, we filmed. It was our team that filmed the first giant squid in history.
I know, that was so cool.
Those kind of things get me excited. Anything water related, it's like unlocking another dimension.
Yeah.
So I get excited about water shows, testing gear out. Did that work? I've built things like camera systems you could tow at 40 miles an hour and still have them really stable. Things like that. I get excited when I get to test them
Hmm.
because you can't. I mean, how else are you going to do this unless you're doing a TV show?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just,
Hmm.
yeah, it's too expensive. Um, but there was one moment when we were up at Snell. It was after the cabin was attacked the first time, and I was not filming for Monster Quest. I was just up there on vacation, and we were at the campfire, and we were burning our perishables. Just the paper.
Right.
And we're there, and we had just I had just cleaned fish and had put all of the entrails on a rock across the bay, and we're then burning them. We come back and we're doing chores, and we're doing the burning up the last of the garbage because we're leaving in the morning.
Hmm.
And here we see, or first we heard a bunch of chattering as if it was like 10 chimpanzees fighting. You'd hear all this chimp noise, and it sounded like two or three animals arguing.
Hmm.
And there we see the big shadows. First one, then another one, and then another one.
That's so
And I was
awesome.
with I'm with my buddy, and we see those. We don't see any details, but you kind of know what it wasn't. It wasn't a black bear. You're not going to get three black bears that are going to walk in a row.
Yeah, no.
It wasn't a moose. It was, coupled with the sound, the cabin attack, and then seeing them, it was pretty interesting.
That's so
Definitely
cool.
memorable.
So you have no doubt in your mind that the species actually exists.
No, I just don't know what it is,
Right.
Kyle. No doubt. No, they
That's awesome.
exist. I just don't know what they are.
Yeah. I think
And
that's the problem with a lot of people too, is
yeah, I
like
have no idea.
I saw it, I see the footprints and this, but there's a lot of speculation around like, are they interdimensional and are they
Yeah,
paranormal?
sure.
Because like I've seen ghost videos of bricks being thrown, like there's nothing there, but clearly a brick just got picked up by
Yeah.
something that you can't see and tossed it. Like, so there's always going to be that too. And yeah, no,
We don't know. We want to know, and maybe we never will. Maybe it'll be many years.
don't say
But
that.
yeah, well, I just say maybe. I'm still doing my best to one, open other people's minds up, and two, to do as many scientific tests that I
Right.
can, assuming that they're just a regular physical animal out there making a living.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think with this kind of topic, it's more you have to learn how to walk before you run.
Yeah.
And and I like to say it too, because my mechanical background, I always say like you can't buy a part for a car that you don't even own. Because you gotta be able to have that car first before you can put that part on it.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of missing pieces to it yet, so we can't just jump into the interdimensional stuff. I mean, like I have evidence, even personally, where like there's orbs or there's UFOs in tandem with sightings and stuff. But right now, it's like got to really focus on getting the DNA and getting the conclusive evidence and the footage and all that stuff, so that yes, okay, it's recognized. Now we can look into it further.
Yeah.
And I don't want to shelf this stuff. Like it's clearly important and it has some sort of tie into it. It's just not the right time for it, I don't feel like.
Yeah. No, it's true. Um, I'm just hoping we get some answers soon.
Right.
Just got to be patient.
Right.
Patience.
And a lot of the people that I talk to are, where's the fossil evidence? Well, I actually kind of took that page from you because watching your shows and watching your podcasts and stuff is we actually don't really have fossil records of the modern animals we have
No,
now.
we have more. I always tell people we have more fossil evidence of Bigfoot than we do of modern animals here in the U.S.
Right.
or North America. We have
And
none. of
And
white-tailed deer, none of moose, none of these, but yet we have jaw fragments and teeth from this giant ape
mhm.
that could have easily walked across the land bridge.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I think most of that problem is because North America is so unforgiving to bones,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of there's a lot of scavengers out there. A deer carcass will be there for 3 4 days, and they just get picked apart and spread across this area. Because the coyotes come in, the wolves come in, they drag stuff away from it. The birds come in and pick ribs and all that other stuff, and then
right. But
just
why? But why is it we seem to have some fossils of like the Pleistocene era. We do of certain dinosaurs, but we have none of modern animals. None.
mm,
If they were all wiped off the face of the earth right now, nobody would ever go, oh yeah, there was this animal called a
right,
white-tailed deer.
yeah, they wouldn't exist because we
It
don't have
wouldn't
any fossil
exist.
record.
But so when I tell them that argument that we actually have more of Bigfoot than we do of deer, they're like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. And I try to kind of throw that out there too. But and it's also because these animals really haven't been around long enough in order to have something in the fossil record too. I mean, because like, look at the T Rex, for example. We have like 20 or 30 like legitimate full skeletons of them. And who knows how many there were? I mean, they could have been 1 in a million chances that we
yeah,
found those, and they're not all in one area, they're all over the place. So I think there had to be a few million per one fossil that we find
yeah,
because there's so much, environmental conditions that will destroy bones. There's animals that scavenge and preyed on them. So to be able to find a legit fossil and tie it in with its own skeleton and have a full skeleton, you know, to be able to be displayed and analyzed, man, that's really hard to come by.
yeah.
And even then you have the government kind of kicking in, like where was that one T-Rex they found in Montana? I think it was Sally or something like that. The government came in and took it, and then pieces of that got lost just because people are moving it around. So yeah, it's a really hard, and like, it's another thing too is people always say like, oh, we would have found a body by now and stuff like that. Well, if we think about it, if they live in the most uncharted places on Earth, first off, people don't go there. So you're not going to be able to find a body. Second off, if they bury their dead, that's going to be another issue. And thirdly, Native Americans bury their dead and they protect that site. That's holy ground. You don't just walk in there and start digging out. You like, that's
Yeah.
not how that works. So I think there's a lot of problems with that, that question too.
Well, I think to find bones of a Bigfoot would be like Todd Neese says, take a BB, go up in a helicopter and drop it in the forest, one little BB,
Right.
and then send a crew in there to find it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wouldn't be easy.
No, absolutely. I would say impossible without a metal detector.
Yeah.
But bone ain't metal, so it's kind of hard to do that. And like I've been in the woods my whole life, and I've very rarely come across skeletons. I mean, I find a couple bones here and there, but that's just because it was a recent kill from a year or two ago. So it's really it shouldn't really even be a question as to why we don't have bones.
No, but it seems to be one of the greatest arguments the skeptics can kind of come up with.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those in the list of 5 or 6 that it's almost one of those, well, this and this and this is the reason, why I don't believe it. And you can't really stray them from that.
No.
And that's why, I like to tell people too, is if you don't believe me, come out with me and I'll show you one. And I'll I'll prove you wrong. Well, not necessarily prove you wrong, but let me open that paradigm for you, because this is a legitimate real species. And if you can stay there and keyboard warrior all you want, but until you go out there and you see one like you have, like I have, nothing's going to change your mind. I mean, like the Patterson-Gimlin footage, there's still people who don't think that's real. And I know you've done a lot of analysis on that
Oh God,
that
yes.
footage.
Still doing it. Still doing it.
And I mean, even with the new HD stuff they just came out with, like the details on that is so beyond the capabilities that we had in 67. There's no way.
Have you
There's
seen the
no
new
way.
footage that Isaac did and Isaac and Jeff did for the proof is out there on History Channel?
I think so.
The newest one.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there can be more done yet. Trust me.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
film's not done talking yet.
No, no. Well, the thing that really like got me the most, and like I always saw, I mean, obviously I was born way past that happening. And I grew up watching that film and just seeing it and be like, no, there's no way that's a suit, you know? And even
Yeah.
with the quality of the original footage is what I saw first. I knew that it wasn't a suit just because there's too many details involved in it. I mean, if you're going to fake a suit, why not just be a 9 foot tall male? Why are you going to make it a female with all these crazy technical aspects and muscles and tendons and skin and all the stretching? Like you can see that in the old footage.
Yeah. It's certainly, the more anybody tries to debunk it, any scientist, as soon as they start examining, I mean, it's within literally an hour, and you go, "Oh, there's no way it can be fake."
Right. And the quad muscle, you can see it's blown.
Yeah,
And the reason she's only walking is because her quad muscle is blown. I think if her quad wasn't blown and she was in as good a condition without it, she would have been gone. They never would have got that footage.
you're talking about the thigh.
Right, right.
Yep. I
So,
remember when I discovered that little feature, people were saying, "Well, it was just an artifact in the film because we didn't notice it." And I'm like, "Well, you didn't notice it because you didn't have $100,000 worth of gear on your table." And that, I could loop it back and forth and I could do all sorts of slow-mo loops.
mhm.
And I just sat there and stared at one little tiny, each part of that footage 100 times. And all of a sudden I'm like, saw that, which could be a hernia,
Mhm.
which by the way is, I show it to surgeons and they go, "Oh yeah, we fix those." In females that get pregnant, hernia starts in the crotch and then works its way down to the thigh.
Wow.
It's a female only hernia. Well, what is
Okay.
Patty?
A female.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought it was the quad muscle was actually blown from some sort of damage or
Well,
stress to
no,
it.
it is, but
Okay.
it's muscle protruding through the lining,
Right.
but it didn't originate there. It actually originated up in the crotch area
Wow.
during pregnancy.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's super cool to know, but that just makes it even more distinguishable.
You take it to a surgeon that fixes those, and the guy goes, "Oh, I fix those all day long."
Wow. That's
Yeah,
so
that's
intriguing.
exactly what that is. It's exactly, yeah, it's bumping out exactly. Yep, yep, that's it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
called a femoris hernia or something.
Yeah. So
It's
Bob Gimlin wasn't out there, all right, let's make this because no one
no,
else in the world knows what this
they
means.
wouldn't even have known that. There's no
Exactly.
way.
Exactly. So yeah,
The
it's
gait, and then the other thing it could be, and I'm still open to it, is a highly developed femoris muscle because of the compliant gait. If you start walking around your house tonight, if I set my watch for an hour and say, "Okay, Kyle, you're going to take a walk for 1 hour," you would make it like 10 minutes with your knees never knocking. Within 10 minutes, that exact muscle that shows that bump is going to start aching
mhm,
on both legs.
right because they don't walk like we do.
They don't lock their knees.
Mhm,
And so it could be a highly developed femoris muscle and not a hernia, but because we can't see the other side,
right. There's no
and
way to compare.
there's no way to compare. And the fact that on the right thigh, um, generally you would think that a highly developed muscle would be more developed evenly and not in such a knot.
Mhm,
So I still think it's an injury, like
right.
from pregnancy.
Right.
And
Because
it makes sense because I always think, okay, the Freeman footage where the creature exposes itself, where we actually get footage. I have a theory. It's a female leading people away from the infant, just like a killdeer. So
okay,
it's
so it's basically like a distraction.
a distraction
Right.
because it seems, if you really think about it, and it's also one of the reasons people poo-poo it. Some scientists, well, it would have ran the other direction. That was a wild animal. It just would have ran into the woods.
Not if it's highly
Not
intelligent.
if its baby was in the woods and
Hmm.
it wanted to lead these cowboys away, and then circle back.
Yep.
So in the Freeman footage, if you really get in, well, we got this book that's coming out. I've been working with Michael Freeman, Paul's son. And there's a baby in that film too that's being lifted. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I haven't studied it.
Well,
I
in the
have seen
book,
it.
we bought government software, government AI software, and we've got a clip that's going to be in the book of the enhanced baby footage of the lift. Clearly, you can see the legs and the toes. It's lifting a baby, but it is interesting that same individual did the same thing with Paul, came out in the open and walked the opposite direction.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always find too, especially in my experiences, is that there's always triangulation going on. So whether you're focused on one, there's two more. And whether or not they're ready
Right.
to distract you from something that you may or may not be trying to do, there's always
Right.
three. I've very rarely come across where there's just one. Very rarely. And like it just makes even more sense being that it's not a known behavior for any other animal to walk into more open view when they're trying to get
Right.
away from you, or
Yeah.
walk away. I mean, even towards a road, it doesn't make sense unless it was a diversion.
Well, what's another one more piece of film that was out in the open that I spent a ton of money forensically on it. It's also got a baby in it, and that's the Memorial Day footage. That thing came totally out in the open also, which is just weird.
Hmm.
That's always a baby involved when they're out in the open like that.
Yeah.
So just once again, it's a theory, but I just keep seeing the same pattern over and over again. I just analyzed another video that a guy brought to my attention. Not I don't know, about a week ago, and I put it in my podcast last week.
We'll have to
And
check
did
that out.
analyze same damn thing in this one. It's out in the
Wow.
open. So
That's conclusive, honestly.
well, it's not conclusive, but it's a fun theory to just keep looking out for.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but the reason I say conclusive is because it's clearly a pattern. There's something going
It
on, and
seems, yeah,
in
it
order
seems
for
like
them
it.
to walk out and expose themselves, it's not because they want to. It's because they feel that there's a reason to do it. It doesn't
Yeah,
make any logical
I
sense
think they're
other than
doing
that.
it on purpose. Is
Correct.
my point. Yes, they're
Yeah.
actually doing it on purpose.
That's intriguing for me,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'll
because
definitely
you can use that. Anytime you have a little knowledge, like or even a theory, you can use those theories to outsmart one of these things.
maybe.
Yeah, maybe exactly. You just we're all waiting for that perfect storm of circumstances.
Yeah.
Like the Gimlin, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, they had the perfect storm. They knew there was creatures in the air because of the tracks. Here they are in the right spot at the right time, and there's a noisy stream, big log jam.
Hmm.
The thing standing behind that log jam, you can't see them, and they're on horses. So if any wind did come down, it smelled animals,
Hmm.
not people.
Right.
It was the perfect storm, and they got footage, and there was maybe a baby involved. Once
Yeah.
again, the perfect storm.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and there's people who've also checked into the Patterson footage where they even say that there's another one like up in the woods and just a bunch of stuff
yeah,
going on in that footage. And I don't know if you've looked into that or not.
sure, but that could, yeah, it's just the film isn't clear enough to
Right.
look into the deep shadows of the woods
Right. And
and go,
I've
oh, there's one peeking out because
yeah.
it's just so much of that pareidolia going on.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I find that too with a lot of people. I'll get, pictures and messages and stuff, and it's almost like they're making something out of nothing, because they see a shadow. And like I even have, like videos on my phone where just taking a video in the woods and it looks like something moves and you focus
yeah,
on it and analyze it, but you know damn well it ain't nothing because you walked over there 10 minutes after you took the video and there's nothing there. And
yeah,
it's that shading, and then that split second you might be able to see a face because it's just the pigments of, or maybe your phone trying to figure out what's in there, or the light, a shadow maybe went over. There's It's really inconclusive unless you have like Patterson-Gimlin quality footage.
exactly. Yeah, we need it out in the open in full sun.
Hmm.
And yeah, there'll be another piece. I think there's a there's a piece of footage called I think I saw a skunk ape. Hasn't really gone anywhere. There's a creature ripping open cypress bark.
Okay.
Could be a bear. It's definitely a real animal.
Hmm.
And the guy ran when this thing finally stood up, and he realized in his mind it wasn't a bear. Could see shoulders.
Hmm.
But I've watched that footage 1,000 times, and I'm still like, is that a bear? God, it's got big shoulders. Nah, I don't think it's a bear. But have you seen that footage,
I
Kyle?
haven't. No, I
Oh yeah,
haven't.
it's called I Think I Saw a Skunk Ape.
Okay.
Definitely a real animal. If you ever go down to Florida and try to rip, well, you're in Florida,
Yeah.
try to grab cypress bark
No.
on a cypress tree and rip it off.
That's
It's the toughest bark in
yeah.
the world. It's not going anywhere.
Nope.
I remember ripping my shoulder one time trying to mess around with cypress bark.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
this
No.
thing's
It's
just tearing this thing open, this tree.
yeah. The research that I've done here in Florida, with the Sasquatch, they're very different. A lot of them, and a lot of the accounts I've heard are extremely aggressive. There's one out of Ocala, where it was back in, I think, the 50s or 40s. It was, I think, two Boy Scouts or maybe just two boys camping, and they got chased back to their tent, and it grabbed the
Mm.
tent and it flung the tent against a tree and it broke the kid's arm.
Oh, geez.
Just crazy stuff like that. And a lot of the eyewitness accounts say that they're almost hairless. They're extremely muscular, but they're smaller. They're not 8, 9 foot. They're, pushing maybe 6. But it makes sense ecologically, because if you drive through the woods in Florida, there's so many palmettos, and even the deer are small. The pigs are small. A lot of the
Right.
animals out there are small. Your video cut out.
Oh, okay.
The animals there are much smaller than they are up north, and I think because of that diversity, um, they're they're smaller, just because they have to kind of weave through those palmettos and whatnot, and you can't really have a good protein source out of small animals. You have to get multiple small animals, but the only way to catch those small animals is you have to be small enough to get them,
Right.
in order to fit through those cracks and crevices. So to me, it makes sense, but I almost feel like there's a lot less kind of evidence going around down here in Florida. And I've reached out to people, and there's really not a lot of people who want to talk about it. And even like my coworkers, they don't want to hear it. They do not want to talk about it. They want to know about it.
Yeah.
It's just, go back to work. I don't want
Yeah.
to. This isn't something I want to talk about.
Oh,
So
there's no doubt. There's creatures down in Florida.
yeah,
No doubt.
yeah. But that's and it's not something I really want to do. I don't want to go drag myself underneath palmettos, to go do research.
I've done
So
research down there. It's not fun.
no, it doesn't look fun. It doesn't sound fun.
My first wood knock I ever had happened in Florida
Really,
that I heard. Yeah, oh yeah,
that's so cool.
3, 4 in the morning, in a swamp. I was with
Yep.
Matt Moneymaker. We're down there wood knocking, and it was the first return I ever heard. I was like, whoa,
That's so cool.
so cool.
I get so amped when I hear stuff like that. When it's not a person out there, when it's an elk ain't up there smacking its horns against a tree, or even just once. Like I've had trees broken down by me. I've had trees pushed over around me. I had a rock thrown at me. Like I've had so much stuff happen. It's just there's no way that it's anything else. Bear ain't gonna pick up a rock and heave it, 50 yards at you.
Right.
And there's just no logical explanation for it.
I don't even think that they're doing wood knocking with a tree.
Yeah, so tell me about that.
I think they're doing, they're basically cupping. That's probably based on some of the audio analysts that were done and continue to do, and the fact they can do multiple notes at one time. I believe that they probably have some type of another air sac, basically another lung. That makes sense, a third lung.
Yeah.
And I think that they're just using their hands, or huge hands, and the right kind of breathing. There's a guy that I met just the other day that can do it exact.
Really?
Like exact. He can make this beautiful wood knocky sound. He's figured it out, but And the reason I say I don't think they're doing it on a log, because we've done wood knocks very unexpectedly in an area. We wait till 2, 3 in the morning, do a wood knock, get a response 20 feet away from you,
Wow.
like instantly. And you watch the guys you're with turn white.
Yeah, and there's no way they're gonna pick up the
Right.
perfect
They're gonna
branch.
find a log, and they're gonna another log, and they're gonna find the right tree.
Yeah.
No, it happened. Boom, just like
Wow.
that.
Yeah, that's I always had problems with that too, is when it was like an instantaneous return. It's like, how did they have a log in their hand
No,
ready to
I don't
go? You
know.
know?
There's been so few. I mean, there's been a few throughout history, but not many, or if anybody ever even seen a Bigfoot holding a stick.
Right. Yeah, let alone finding
No,
sticks that have been hit with on another tree. Because
yeah,
you take a branch or a log, a decent sized log, and you smack it on another tree hard enough
right.
to make a sound like they do, you would see some indentation on either one of those.
Yeah.
And the fact that they have that slimy skin cell stuff going on that you were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
you that'd be definitive evidence right there. But I've never found a piece of wood that's been hit by another tree. I found rocks
Yeah.
in New York
Yeah, they
State.
do. They no doubt do rock
Yeah.
lacking.
Yeah. In New York State, I found fresh evidence of that where we heard um, rock knocks that night before. We went over there that next morning and I found a trackway leading into this little kind of pit. And the bark, or not the bark, the moss on a rock had been pulled back. And when you clock, two rocks together, you get that kind of rock dust.
Yep.
Well, it was on the rock. You could see the rock dust from where it had hit. And then you could almost see the 2 or 3 fingers that peeled the moss back. And
Mm.
another thing too, I didn't even see the spot where the rocks hit. I just saw the moss was ripped. I peeled it back. So whatever had done it had peeled the moss back, made the rock noises, and then pushed the moss back. Or maybe it had pushed back itself, just kind of regrowing. But the moss wasn't even brown or yellow yet, which means that it was like within 12 hours.
Mm.
Because if you've ever ripped moss and then come back the next day, it's dead.
Yeah.
So that was like, whoa, and you could see like the 2 or 3, like individual where it pushed down and then it made kind of like a U to the next spot where it made another impression. So there's no other animal that was going to do that. A squirrel wasn't going to peel the moss back and be able to make a rock do that and leave the dust, and it
Yeah,
doesn't
that's
make
pretty
sense.
cool. No, I think they do. I think they do a lot of subtle communication with rocks
Mhm.
clacking together.
Yeah. And, we've also heard weird ones too, where it sounds like a rock hitting a tree, where it's not a clack and it's not like a thunk, but it's like a mixture of both. It's so hard to kind of
Mm.
understand, but the only thing we can get to sound anything remotely similar is taking a rock and smacking a tree trunk, and it hurts the hell out of your hand. So I just, unless we see it happen, there's really no way of knowing for sure.
Yeah, of course. Yep.
But that's an interesting thing to think about. I didn't know that they would be able to make that noise with just their lungs or their hands.
I'm about 100% on that.
It's awesome, and I'll take your word for it. You do more
About,
research than I do.
still open minded. They're using sticks, but
Right.
I've just had too many experiences with instant returns.
Yeah. That's super interesting. Well, I think that's about it for tonight. I want to say thank you again, Doug, for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks. Thanks
Really,
for
really
inviting me.
appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me. Hopefully we covered something new.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, this is all stuff that I usually talk about too. And hopefully soon I'll be able to get like Jeff Meldrum on the show, and I really am pushing for Les Stroud to come on too. But a lot of people who come on don't really have the scientific backing and the production backside story like you do. So for me, it was more about the scientific aspect of it, and it will be with Jeff too, than I would with just somebody who has had an encounter or anything like that. So it was important that I get you on the show,
Yeah,
at
well,
least in my knowledge.
thanks for the invite. It was really cool talking to you. I think you'll go far, Kyle.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
That
I think you'll
means
do
that
good.
means so much to me coming from you. I have no idea.
I think you'll go far.
Thank you.
You definitely have the curiosity, and you got that gleam in your eye.
That's
keep it
just the
going.
light.
Keep it going, man. Keep it going.
Thank you.
All
Well,
right.
like I said, again, thank you so much for coming on, and maybe I'll get you on again.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kyle.
All right, bye,
Talk
everybody.
soon. All right. Bye.